Last night was the latest fan forum at Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, and yet again, the reaction from those Spurs fans who weren't there is that it's a setup where no difficult questions are allowed to be asked, and that the fans who are there are cherry-picked by the club because they won't try to rock the boat. Despite that, quotes have come out from last night that once again fans are upset with, particularly those quotes from Chairman Daniel Levy. In today's episode of the Spurred On Podcast, I'll be talking about that as well as other Tottenham Hotspur news of the day. Guys, thank you so much for listening and tuning in. Please do press that like button on YouTube. Please do press subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. And go over to the podcast platform, Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Give me a subscribe or a follow there. Really appreciate your support. But like I said, last night was the fans forum. And as ever, the chairman, Daniel Levy, was there. Big Ange was there. Son Heung-Min was there. And Johan Lange was there as well. But it is the quotes mostly coming from Daniel Levy that has particularly upset Tottenham fans. I'm going to take you through a lot of what was said last night and give you my thoughts on it. Please do get in the comments box below, guys. Let me know what you thought of what was said last night and in general, what you think of the fans forum. Is it really just a whitewash that the club put on to try and appease fans? Because as ever, every year that this happens, everyone is always just really upset that basically no difficult questions were asked, or at least those questions that did allude to the difficult topics were asked in such a way that made it easy for certainly Daniel Levy to answer. But let's start with Ange. He was asked, is it time to show more pragmatism in games? Teams that win trophies have solid defences as well as attacks. And Ange just said the following. He said, you're spot on, mate, but it won't be us. As much as we want success, there is a Spurs way, and I won't deviate from that. Now, what I'll say about that quote is that a lot of people on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it, are taking that as Ange Postecoglou to try and suggest that actually he wants success and he wants to be more defensive to get that, but there's a Tottenham way and he's being told by those above him to only play in a certain way and therefore not really care about success. I personally do not read those quotes in that way whatsoever. I think Ange Postecoglou really feels like he's the perfect manager for Tottenham Hotspur because he is all about going forward. He wants to score more goals than the opposition. He wants to be on the front foot. And he knows, and he's very open about this, that if they score a couple of early goals in each game, as unlikely as that may sound at the moment, then it's very unlikely that teams will score 3 or 4 against us to beat us. So when he says, you're spot on, mate, but it won't be us, I think what he's just continuing to do is drill into the fan base, drill into the club as a whole, from the staff to the players on the pitch, the mentality that we are to dare is to do, forward thinking, on the front foot, playing beautiful football and trying to score more goals than the opposition. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, compared to some of the managers we've had previously between Pochettino and now, and of course I'm talking about Jose Mourinho, I'm talking about Nuno, and I'm talking about Antonio Conte, it is refreshing to me to have someone in charge who is absolutely, completely on a level with what the club wants in terms of what the fan base want in terms of the style of play. Let me know if you think differently. Let me know, anyone in the comments. Did you like the football we played under Jose Mourinho? Did you like the football we played under Antonio Conte? I know, the honeymoon period was great, but do you not remember the honeymoon periods, even under Nuno, all 3 of those managers, the honeymoon periods where we won the first few games, we were top of the league for a little bit, and everyone's saying, well, it's all well and good playing this kind of football if you're winning, but when you stop winning, what is there left to cheer about? What is there left for the fans to enjoy? And it turned out to be true, didn't it? As soon as the players kind of turned off it, as soon as the players got upset by the training methods, got upset by the boring style of football, and they stopped winning those games, the fans turned their back on those managers as well. And what we have now in Ange Postecoglou is a manager who's saying, I'm going to turn this club over from top to bottom, from being a club with a mentality of not quite getting there to being a club who's going to be on the front foot, who's going to stop thinking about the possibility of losing games because they're so concentrating on trying to score so many goals that it's impossible to lose games. And I, for one, I'm with it. This is what I grew up with as a Spurs fan in the 80s, and this is what I want my Spurs to be. And I actually think, I know it's difficult to hear this, but I actually think because of the size of the club, compared to those clubs who are sports washing, by which I mean Manchester City and Chelsea, although they're not in a great run at the moment in terms of the kind of laughing stockness of the club, although they've started this season quite well. Newcastle, who are trying to sports wash, but the rules are kind of stopping them. Manchester United, not a sports washing club at the moment, but the way they got their size was by just spending money, millions and millions of pounds back in the 90s, when other clubs weren't able to. Our size of club compared to those clubs means we have to do something different. I know we're growing as a club through infrastructure and our revenue is increasing, and we'll talk about that more later in the episode. But we have to have a style of play on the pitch that is going to be able to compete with those clubs, and it has to be a team thing, because we're not going to be able to buy the players who are the very elite, because Manchester City are going to pick them off. Chelsea are going to pick them off. Certainly Chelsea are picking off the best young players in the world at the moment. Real Madrid are going to pick them off. Barcelona are going to pick them off. Manchester United are going to pick them off. Even Arsenal above us are going to be able to pick them off because they are further down the road of their project and are able to pay more in wages. Levy talks later on, and I'll bring you the quotes, about wanting a minority investment in the club. That is so they can have more capital, so they can spend more money on transfer fees and on wages. So it'll come. But at this stage, Ange Postecoglou is absolutely the right manager for us. I'm so sure of it. And he's building a young, hungry, impressive team, and we've got to be patient. Anyway, when asked what strategies are being implemented to score more goals from all the possession we're having at the moment, Son Heung-Min, our captain, said this. He said it needs individual brilliance as well as team brilliance. We're working harder in training and mustn't get bored of the work. I like that about Sonny. He knows. This is what I get from it. He knows that the style being implemented as a team, the moves on the pitch, the muscle memory of the things that every player is supposed to do in different positions on the pitch, it's all there. But now he's saying, we've had a lot of possession this season. We've had a lot of opportunities in the final third. But now what we need to do is make the right decisions and bring a bit of brilliance to it as well. I think maybe that's a little bit of what's been missing so far this season. I think we've had a couple of decent goals, but no absolute barnstormers yet that I can think of. And he wants to add a little bit more brilliance amongst the squad. And I think that'll move on into January as well, and next summer's transfer window. We want to add players at that point to our young, hungry squad who can add a little bit of je ne sais quoi to it as well. I like that Sonny said that. Let me know what you think in the comments. Daniel Levy was asked about style of play at the club and investment in the academy. He said this: our view is we want to play a certain way. I don't think we're dictating to Ange that he can only sign a young player. He will sign who he feels is best for the team. Obviously, though, we feel that bringing young players through the academy is what Spurs fans want to see. That's why we're going to be putting more resources into the academy, because we love seeing a player come all the way through and then he's one of our own. As a result of that, we'll end up probably being younger than we otherwise would be. So that to me showcases the change in strategy over the last year or 18 months or so. Younger team, younger squad, like I said, investing more in the academy, bringing players through. The likes of Luka Vuskovic, who is going to come in from... he's not in the academy, obviously, but we bought him as a young player, similar as we bought Lucas Bergvall and Archie Gray. And we're going to invest in these young players whilst also investing in the players like Mikey Moore, like Alfie Dorrington, who are literally coming through the academy, and trying to give them a pathway that hasn't really been there since the likes of Harry Kane, Andros Townsend, Jake Livermore, and all those boys back then, even to Danny Rose, when he was bought young from Leeds and was in the academy for a few years before he made his breakthrough into the first team. Again, this is a strategy that Tottenham, in my opinion, need to implement because of the size of club we are compared to those who I'm afraid have grown quicker than us around us, like Newcastle, like Chelsea, like Man City. Maybe not Newcastle, but Newcastle are trying to, at least through having been bought by a state, an oil state, are trying to grow quicker than us. And we've got to fight that by being smart, not just by spending the biggest amount of fees and the biggest amount of wages like Chelsea tried to do, but by being smart with our academy and trying to make our academy as strong as the academies of Chelsea and Man City, who have invested in those academies over the last 15 and 20 years. We are behind on that, and I think it's the right thing to now, having built the infrastructure of the training ground and the stadium, now properly invest in the academy and make Tottenham Hotspur the place where all the best talent around London and around the country want to come to, because we are behind on that and have been for a while. Now, one of the things that Daniel Levy was asked last night that really brought fans some anger when he gave his answer is the following. He was asked what he feels his top 3 achievements as chairman of Tottenham Hotspur have been. And he said, 1, getting to the Champions League final, 2, opening the amazing stadium, and 3, the fantastic players we have had here. And the anger seems to come from the fact that he said his top achievement was getting to the Champions League final, rather than, some people are saying, he should have said, winning the League Cup. Now, that to me is controversial. I don't think I agree with people who are angry about that, because I would say, my personal opinion, let me know what you think in the comments, but I would say the greatest feeling I've had in my life as a Spurs fan was that last-minute winner from Lucas Moura to get us into the Champions League final. It was just beyond. I cried. I cried like a baby. And the Champions League final should have been the best night of my life, but it was 22 seconds of joy. That's all it was. So I can understand what Daniel Levy's talking about. The idea of Tottenham Hotspur getting to the Champions League final in my lifetime, it had never really crossed my mind. I really, it was pipe dreams. It was pie in the sky, but it actually happened. And we shouldn't forget that. And all of those of you who hate the board and hate the decisions and hate the leadership, don't forget it though. Don't forget that everything that was put in place led to that moment. And now we're rebuilding again to try and get back up to those kind of moments. But you have to give credit where it's due if you're also going to abuse people. And I, for one, can understand why Levy said that was his number one moment, because I actually remember when we won the FA Cup in 1991. I was very young. I was 10 years old. But my personal opinion is that getting to that Champions League final was bigger than that FA Cup win. Now, that's not to say I don't want us to win trophies. Of course I do. I'll take any trophies. I want the League Cup. I want the Europa League. I want the FA Cup. Of course I do. I think winning trophies will breed winning more trophies, and that's what Tottenham need, and that's what Ange is fighting for. He knows that. That winning feeling brings a mentality into the club that then allows you to win things even maybe when you're not playing that well. I hate to say it, but them lot down the road, Arsenal, they won the FA Cup in Arteta's first season pretty much only because they'd won 4 or 5 FA Cups in the previous decade under Wenger. So they had that feeling, and in Arteta's first season, Arsenal were terrible. They finished 8th in the league, but they won the cup because the club at that point knew how to win things. Tottenham have to get to that. But at this point, we're not, and that Champions League final, for those 3 weeks before that Champions League final, it's just the greatest time to be a Spurs fan, because Arsenal fans, Chelsea fans, they were all absolutely shitting themselves that we were going to win it. And I thought we were able to dream during that period, and I want more opportunities like that. And I think we're building it. It's going to take patience. It's going to take time. But we've got the right man in charge in terms of Ange Postecoglou, and we need to keep building towards it. Daniel Levy was also asked about the criticism he faces from the fans. He says, I have a very thick skin and I just ignore it. It makes me want to be more successful. Now, people have got angry about him saying makes me want to be more successful because they feel like he's had no success. Look, there is an argument for that. There's an argument to say, he shouldn't think he's been successful at all because we haven't won a league or a Champions League, or we haven't won a League Cup since 2008. But I get what he's saying. He gets so much abuse. And look, he's just a bloke at the end of the day. And yes, he's made some mistakes as chairman of Spurs. Of course he has. He could have invested in players more at certain opportunities. But also, he has built Tottenham into a proper top 4-5 club. I really believe that. And you've got to give some credit where it's due. I know I'm going to get loads of you're a Levy apologist, you're a happy clapper or whatever, you're Enoch. I'm not. I don't care about the boardroom in terms of the personalities or the characters. I care about Tottenham Hotspur as a club, and I'm sorry, but you cannot deny that Tottenham Hotspur are a bigger club now than they were 20 years ago. They are, in terms of how the Premier League has moved on and how we've had to grow with the Premier League. If we were still back in the days of the noughties, the very early noughties at White Hart Lane, which was falling apart and rusting, and the old Spurs Lodge, which was a really horrible little training ground, we wouldn't be able to attract any good players. And we've had some wonderful players at this club. So let's give credit where it's due, as well as also be able to admit he's not been perfect by any means. But those people who think that Daniel Levy is like Mike Ashley at Newcastle, no. Or think that he's like the Glazers at Man United, no. They literally take funds out in these huge dividends every year. Daniel Levy doesn't do that. What he does do, and I think it's bad for optics, he takes an enormous salary, the highest salary of any chairman in the Premier League. And I personally, if I were him, I wouldn't take that. If I were him, I would have something smaller. Somewhere in the kind of, he keeps it to the 6th highest wage bill in the Premier League. So take the 6th highest chairman salary. That's something where I think the optics are bad. And obviously there have been other bad decisions. I talked about it in a video recently. The furlough decision optically looked really bad, and a few others. And I will criticise him where he deserves to be criticised. But as a human being, does he deserve to be called all the names that he's called? No, I don't think so. And I think it's unfair. Similar to what I say about abusing Tottenham players, abusing Brennan Johnson. You shouldn't do it. Don't abuse them as people. You can criticise them for their mistakes professionally. Of course you can, because we all pay a lot of money into that football club. But don't abuse them as people. Daniel Levy was asked about the fixture congestion currently in the Premier League and European football and international football. He said there's too many games, but the problem we have, the particular problem in England, is we have an extra cup competition compared to the rest of Europe. And in Europe, the most important fixtures for the big teams is European competitions. Whereas we have the Premier League, which is the hardest league in the world, yet we still want to do well in Europe. So it's a particular problem for the English teams, and I do think it is a problem. The friendlies for the international tournaments is another problem, particularly for someone like Sonny, who has to travel so far for his country. I think it's a FIFA issue that's going to have to be compromised with UEFA, but I do have a lot of sympathy for the players. As a club, we would like to see less games but higher quality games. So if that means we have to see some changes in some of our competitions, then so be it. I think in the end that it's in the long-term interest of the players. Our view is that we want to play a certain way. I don't think we're dictating to Ange that he can only sign a young player. Oh, that's the same quote as I gave anyway, earlier, sorry. But yeah, talking about the fixture congestion, how it affects the club, I think it's an interesting one, because I think a lot of fans would say don't take away the League Cup because it's a great opportunity for winning another trophy, and I would agree with that. But also, you can see from his point of view, the chairman's point of view, there's no money in the League Cup, and that upsets a lot of the fans that he would care about that. But he also knows if he wants to build the club to where he wants it to get to, winning Premier Leagues and winning Champions Leagues, you need to be spending the most money on players, and getting in the top four and getting in Europe each season into the Champions League is the best way of doing that. So I can see why some fans get annoyed with him at suggesting maybe he's alluding to their losing the League Cup, but also I can see his point of view, because we've got to keep building. Ange was asked his thoughts on fixture congestion. He said, I think it's getting close to breaking point, and if the authorities ignore it, I think the players will take it into their own hands. Well, there's been a lot of chat recently, hasn't there, with the PFA and some others about the possibility of players striking if they're asked to play as many fixtures as are in the calendar. There's something ridiculous actually coming up, which is that new World Club Cup that Chelsea are in, for instance, and a few other English clubs are in. Man City are in it. And it's basically like the World Cup for clubs coming this summer. And that is going to blow the fixture calendar up in the air, because just players will get no rest whatsoever. Sonny was also asked about the increased number of fixtures, and he said, I'm not a robot and it should be quality over quantity. So they're all on pretty much the same hymn sheet there. They're singing from the same hymn sheet. Then comes one of the real big controversies that Daniel Levy was asked about it, albeit asked quite softly about it, I think, which is the senior concessions controversy. Which, for those of you who don't know, is the fact that Tottenham have taken away, or at least paused for now, the concessions for those who are known as seniors, the kind of OAPs, the older members of the fan base. He said the following: we announced a few months ago that we would do a review on the whole concession policy at the club. We haven't stopped senior season tickets, because this year we've actually increased the number of seniors. We met the FAB, the Fan Advisory Board, last week, and we're going to form a working group. There's an underlying problem that as time goes on, if we don't curtail the number of concession seats in our stadium, our whole financing model will come into question, because obviously we can't have a situation where our ticket revenue ends up falling. So it's a very complicated subject which we are going to review. But matchday concessions are still available. We're certainly not going to stop them. And we haven't said that we're stopping seniors. We've just said we'll put a pause on it at the moment. We have a duty to look at all fans. We've just said we'll put a pause on it. And we have to make sure we have enough space in the stadium to bring through new fans. So we have to somehow find a balance, which is what we're going to engage with the FAB on and see what we can come up with. Well, as I said, this is a controversial one, because this does seem a little bit unnecessary. There are a lot of seats in the stadium, and of course, one of the big problems, or big seen as controversies that is brought up a lot, is how many tickets are sold to what are known as, or seen as, kind of tourist fans, especially those from South Korea, who are wrongly basically accused of taking seats in the ground that should be for what's deemed to be kind of homegrown fans. Ange Postecoglou talked about this a year ago, didn't he? And he said he was upset with this idea that people see a foreign fan as different to a homegrown fan, because of course he was from Australia and he would have loved to have come and got a ticket to watch Spurs, and did come and watch English games when he was travelling as a youngster. And I think that's true. But also, I think where Levy has to be careful is, again, with the optics. Don't make old age pensioners suffer. Don't make them pay as much as everybody else when they're just living on their pensions. There aren't going to be that huge a number of them where it's really going to make the entire ticket structure fail like he's talking about. And I think he should just kind of fall on his sword on this one. I really do. Away from controversy, Sonny was asked who his favourite Spurs player of all time is, and he said, perhaps surprisingly, especially considering his incredible relationship that he had on the pitch with Harry Kane, he actually said that his favourite Spurs player of all time is Ben Davies. Of course, they've been at the club together for 10 years or more, haven't they? And are the senior players in the squad now. But yeah, maybe that was a bit of a surprise. Who did you think Sonny might say his favourite player was? Let me know in the comments below. A bit more kind of Spurs news away from that fan forum. Son Heung-Min has created more chances from open play this season than any other player in the Premier League. That kind of surprised me because with the eye test, I didn't think Sonny had been playing that well, but he's clearly getting into some important positions, and that's great news. If we can get him scoring properly, obviously I know he scored 2 against Everton, but if we can get him scoring properly again, then we could start doing some serious damage in this league. And then one little bit of slightly indirect Spurs news. Gio Lo Celso scored yet again for Real Betis last night, making it 3 goals and 1 assist since he returned to the club from Spurs. However, Betis did lose 2-1, and Gio Lo Celso actually got sent off, but it was reversed by VAR to just a yellow card. Do you think we should have sold Giovanni Lo Celso? I think it was time. He wasn't getting on the pitch enough, and I could see him having a good run for Real Betis for maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 games, but then probably picking up an injury, and that's why I think Ange Postecoglou let him go in the end. He knew he was a great player, as he showed at the Etihad last season with a beautiful finish against Man City, but just didn't get on the pitch enough. Let me know what you thought of that fan forum in the comments below, guys. Let's have a little chat about it in the comments. Also, please, if you haven't already, press that like button. Do press subscribe. And do become a member if you like. Only £1 a month. All the details of how to do it in the description box below really helps support me make this daily Spurs content for you. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. Come on, you Spurs.